we have Sam Caligiuri. Well, good evening, everyone. First of all, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Thank you to Right Principles for putting this together. Thank you to each and every one of you for being here tonight. This is part of a grassroots movement that is taking over the country in a very positive way, and which is ultimately going to change the country in a very positive way. And none of us candidates, regardless of the office we're running for, could do it without you. So I know I speak for everyone when I say thank you for being a part of this process, for making your voice heard, and for more importantly, making it heard in a very powerful and potent way. And it's our job as candidates to make sure that we translate that into effective campaigns that are going to result in victory in November of 2010. Not for the sake of advancing any political party per se, but for the sake of putting our country back on the right direction, because God knows it's not heading in the right direction right now. My friends, I'm Sam Caligiuri, and I'm running for the United States Senate against Chris Dodd. And I've got to tell you, I'm doing that, and we need to do that because it's time that we get rid of Chris Dodd, who's been in office for 35 years, since I was 7 years old. And last night's vote in the Congress on the health care bill, we don't only need to get rid of Chris Dodd, we need to get rid of every Democratic House member in Connecticut. For those of you who don't know my background, I'm a state senator in my second term representing the Waterbury area, a Republican and a Democratic district. Before that, I served on the Board of Aldermen in Waterbury for 5 years and as acting mayor of Waterbury for a brief time. And it seems like just yesterday that I was approaching the end of my time of service on the Board of Aldermen in Waterbury. People had come to me and asked me to run for mayor, and I said I wasn't going to run for mayor, and in fact, I wasn't going to run for re-election to the Board of Aldermen. And by July of 2001, with just 6 months left to the end of my term in elected office in Waterbury, I was cruising to what I thought was a pretty easy re-entry into non-political life. I had torn a ligament in my left knee, and I went in for surgery on a Wednesday morning at Waterbury Hospital, struggling to properly educate our school children. Our nation faces enemies abroad who will literally stop at nothing to destroy our way of life as we know it, and the current economic crisis has affected everyone. Everyone here, myself included, and probably everyone we know is hurting because of this current economic crisis. And we've been failed, not just by Chris Dodd, but ultimately by everyone in the Connecticut delegation, and we need to make that change. Well, I see two very significant adverse consequences. Number one is continuing to grow the size of the federal government well beyond anything we can afford. And that has a ripple effect throughout the economy ultimately, because the way you really grow the economy is by reducing spending, reducing the deficit, and responsibly cutting taxes in a broad-based manner, because statistics and data and research shows over and over and over again that if you want to grow the economy, you have to have direct stimulus in the form of tax cuts. But you can't do it responsibly, you can't do it without ballooning the deficit, which is counterproductive to economic growth, unless you get spending under control. So the first adverse consequence of the bill is continuing to grow yet another entitlement program, which politicians will never have the courage to say no to once it gets enacted. The second adverse consequence is that I believe it's ultimately going to result, the public option part of it, will result in government controlling health care and ultimately the rationing of the health care decisions, because it's not going to be properly funded. And let me give you an example out of Connecticut. Connecticut is responsible for the Medicaid program. Connecticut is responsible for reimbursing providers and hospitals who participate in the Medicaid program. The reimbursement rates in Connecticut are so low, because Connecticut can barely afford what it's already paying, that providers are pulling out of the state system, and hospitals in heavily urban areas are being forced to consider merging or closing. God forbid we should make the federal government responsible for health care finance, because it will never be able to keep up with the cost. When it fails to keep up with the cost, it will be forced to start doing things like rationing, like lowering the quality of care. And so the very thing the government is doing allegedly to make life better for the quality of health care is going to have exactly the opposite effect.